Chapter 2 Case Study Full Speed Ahead or Proceed with Caution by Hannah Ross for CIS2050 online. Before I start, I will give a brief overview of what this case entails. This case really focuses on the introduction of social media and how it has drastically changed the business world and therefore the structure of companies as well. Companies have begun to adopt their own models to adhere to their practices, and then employees have adapted in suit. This has caused change in culture, sales, and models of businesses and organizations around the world. Some important points that I would like to note that have occurred throughout this case is that social media is becoming such an essential part of business today in regards to marketing, digital advertising, communicating with employees, sales, and so forth. The implementation of social media practices can either help or harm an organization. It depends on whether the employees can adapt to the social media systems and whether their reputation online can spark or harm sales, services, or whatever ventures the organization decides to go after. There are both internal and external social media practices to benefit a company. Internal would being something like GChat to notify other staff members when you're ready to have a meeting, or external being Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, really getting the company's name out online. Some current IT events that I noticed related to the company is that Carlo's Bake Shop, which is one of the companies focused on the case, is currently closing locations in New Jersey after expanding nationwide and transitioning to online sales. From what I gathered, this is because they're focusing more heavily on their online sales, therefore do not have the time to have so many locations around in Hoboken, New Jersey, and without the state. Carlos Velastro, the owner of Carlo's Bake Shop, will be appearing on other bake shows other than the one that made them popular. Now, the other company, Bayer Material Sciences, has been acquiring a multitude of smaller, similar companies. I believe that this is because they have begun leading the polymer supplier industry. Therefore, they are becoming more of a monopoly within the industry as they grow due to their social media systems that they utilize. To answer the case study questions, the first one asks, identify the management, organization, and technology factors responsible for impeding adoption of internal corporate social networks. I noticed that Carlo's Bake Shop recognized that switching from a paper-based technological and social media-based would minimize the manual employee error and miscommunication within the community. Management in this process was responsible for the internal social work, Chatter, which is the one that they used, because it kept all employees informed and errors were down 30%. Organization allowed people to use digital paperwork and order streams. Many social networks would not be possible without the technology part of the organization because they require the use of cell phones and or computers. The second question asks to compare the experiences of implementing internal social media networks of the two organizations described in the case. Were they successful, and what role did management play in the process? Why were they successful? Both Bayer Material Sciences and Carlo's Bake Shop changed to internal social media networks to better coordinate their business operations. Management utilized the systems to intake and store data. The system positively impacted Carlo's Bake Shop by minimizing order and processing time, then made the company that much more efficient. Bayer Material Sciences adapted a more efficient system of storing, organizing, and collecting data, furthering collaboration within the company. Now, the third and final case study question asks, should all companies implement internal enterprise social networks? Why or why not? I believe yes, all companies should implement internal enterprise social media networks because they've reduced miscommunication, keep employees constantly updated, and help with organization by keeping all business projects centralized in one location. However, the system of social network communication should not omit face-to-face communication. The implementation of both will result in successful leadership and company operations, and I will touch how they're both important later in the presentation. Some ways this case related to Chapter 2 material is the role of information systems in a business. This pertains to social business and organization, and really how these systems keep the business employees informed and all projects centrally organized in one location. It also touches on collaboration and social business platforms, i.e. virtual meeting systems, telepresence, and cloud collaboration services, again, just making the company that much more efficient. Some current case updates that I found through my research is that with social media becoming such an important part of business practices, and Facebook currently being under fire for the release of personal information, how it affects social media and privacy practice could drastically change, with companies becoming more private on social media, which then will snowball and harm their sales. So I don't really foresee that happening, but just being that more careful with their privacy. Also, as I mentioned before, Carlo's Bake Shop is continuously expanding and moving more sales to online, which is why they're closing more stores in New Jersey. The first question I came up with when reading this case study is, what can companies like Carlo's Bake Shop and Bayer Material Sciences do to protect their privacy with social media systems issues that arise, such as Facebook's situation? So just taking from the previous slide about how Facebook is in court from releasing private information. So companies utilize social media so heavily to market their products and sell that a breach in the systems can interrupt not only their sales, but also expose their budgets. To prevent this, companies have to be much more careful about security measures and be conscious about what employees can view, numbers, balance sheets, income statements, all that. The second question I came up with is, how can management teams work with employees to create a balance between the usage of social media information systems and face-to-face communication? As you might remember from before, both of these practices is what makes a successful business. But management teams realize that face-to-face communication leads to greater conversation and output. However, social media systems can be much more convenient and accessible when employers are on the go and in such a fast-paced environment. I believe that management information teams can work with employees to minimize system use while in the proximity of each other, such as in the office, but reserve the technological system use for outside the office while some are on travel or things like that. In conclusion, from this case, I've determined that social media information systems have become a prominent, useful tool in business today. Businesses who implement the practices of these systems have proven to become much more efficient, minimize time of operations, and maximize quality of output. Social networks are continuing to exponentially grow and benefit companies and employees around the world.